Everyone knows RimWorld, but did you know there are dozens of incredible colony builders that might be even more addictive? Today, we're counting down the absolute best colony sims you can play right now, from legendary classics to hidden masterpieces almost nobody is talking about. RimWorld. Nobody warned me that running a space colony would turn me into a sociopath. You drop 3 random survivors on a hostile planet and just hope they don't eat each other. The wild part is the mood system. A colonist might save the entire town from a pirate raid, then have a complete mental breakdown because they had to eat without a table. It sounds ridiculous until you try it. The graphics look like Flash animation from 2006, but the storytelling generator is unmatched. You end up forming deep emotional attachments to little pawns right before a rogue squirrel completely ends your 6-hour run. Against the Storm, a roguelite city builder sounds like a terrible idea that somehow actually works. Usually when you establish a town, you sit there days tweaking roads. Here, it never stops raining, the forest actively hates you, and you build a settlement just to abandon it and start over. Your workers are a mix of humans, harpies, and giant bipedal beavers who constantly complain about everything. The pacing is brutal. If you don't balance your resources perfectly, the queen gets impatient and just deletes your progress. Learning to survive the hostile glades makes every successful extraction feel like a massive victory. Timberborn. Humans are dead and now beavers rule the earth. Instead of standard tech trees, you master fluid dynamics to survive apocalyptic droughts. Manipulating water physics to flood valleys or create artificial lakes is intensely rewarding. I spent an entire Sunday trying to design a wooden Ferris wheel just to keep my furry engineers happy. The camera controls can feel a bit sluggish when your city gets massive, but watching a complex system of water wheels power an entire industrial district makes up for it. You slowly become a master architect trying to outsmart nature with nothing but wood and wet mud. Songs of 6. I still have no idea why the developers added a population cap of 10,000 simulated citizens. Most hardware struggles to handle a few hundred units, but this handles massive empires effortlessly. You rule over different fantasy races that despise each other. If you make the insect people live too close to the humans, they'll literally start a civil war in your streets. Managing a tiny village is easy, but commanding a terrifyingly massive army to conquer your neighbors takes real skill. The learning curve feels like hitting a brick wall, but mastering the chaotic economy turns you into an unstoppable emperor. Oxygen not included. Imagine waking up inside an asteroid with 0 air and 3 idiots who refuse to hold their breath. This forces you to care about things like carbon dioxide buildup and water toxicity. I genuinely wasn't expecting to need a degree in thermodynamics just to keep a space toilet functioning. If your base gets too hot, your crops fry. If it gets too cold, your water pipes shatter. The UI gets heavily cluttered late game, but figuring out how to recycle toxic slime into breathable oxygen gives you a massive rush of accomplishment. Every disaster is purely your fault. Dwarf Fortress. For years, this was the most terrifying game on the internet because it looked like a spreadsheet threw up on a keyboard. The new graphical update makes it playable for normal human beings. Every single dwarf has a generated history, a distinct personality, and extremely specific desires. A dwarf might get depressed because they tripped on a sock, decide to craft a legendary crown out of cat bones, and then lock themselves in a tavern forever. It generates absolute chaos. You don't just build a mountain home, you accidentally write a 10,000-page fantasy epic where everyone dies from a forgotten beast. Frostpunk. The first thing you'll notice is how hopeless everything feels. The world is frozen over, and you control the last city on Earth huddled around a massive coal generator. To keep the heat on, you have to make deeply uncomfortable choices. Putting children to work in the coal mines feels awful, but letting the entire city freeze to death is worse. The moral weight behind every single law you pass makes this brutally engaging. The campaign is essentially a ticking clock of anxiety. Surviving the final massive blizzard makes you feel like an absolute tactical genius who barely cheated death. Going medieval. Most games keep you locked on a flat surface. This gives you a grid where you can dig deep into the earth or build towering stone fortresses. 90% of humanity was wiped out by a plague, leaving you to guide the survivors. It heavily borrows from the RimWorld playbook, but transitioning everything to a three-dimensional space completely changes how you defend your home. Digging massive cellars to keep food cold during summer heat waves is surprisingly fun. The tech progression feels a bit slow right now, but sniping raiders from a custom-built 4-story tower is wildly entertaining. Clanfolk. Somehow, a game about historical Scottish families surviving the winter became my entire weekend. There's no magic and no enemy raids. Your biggest threats are starvation, freezing temperatures, and accidentally letting your fire go out. It requires you to respect the seasons. Every day is spent preparing for the brutal winter months by hoarding food and crafting warm clothes. Seeing your family generationally grow from a tiny camp into a sprawling stone estate gives a massive sense of pride. The tutorial is seriously lacking, but slowly piecing together a functional homestead feels incredibly rewarding. Ratopia. A side-scrolling city builder where every citizen operates on an independent financial system. You play as a royal rat trying to manage a capitalist nightmare. Every rat in your city has their own wallet. If you don't pay them enough for their labor, they can't afford the food you sell, and they end up starving or rebelling. You literally have to balance inflation while fighting off mutant weasels. The combat controls feel a bit floaty, but watching a fully automated rat economy function without collapsing is a weirdly specific thrill. You basically become a furry central bank manager. Space Haven. Instead of being tied to a planet, you build a flying colony ship piece by piece. Your crew is trapped in a metal box flying through a lawless galaxy. You can capture enemy pirates, force them to grow space potatoes, or strip their abandoned ships for hull scraps. Managing the oxygen scrubbers and internal temperature feels like keeping a sinking submarine afloat. The crew combat can be slightly frustrating due to the pathfinding, but designing a massive flying fortress that jumps from star system to star system gives you unmatched freedom. You dictate exactly how your crew survives the void. Banished. This is the granddaddy of modern survival builders. You get zero combat and no skill trees. It's just you, a group of exiles, and the looming threat of winter. The mechanics seem brutally simple until your town expands too fast and a single bad harvest wipes out 50 hours of work. Managing the fragile balance between population growth and food production is an absolute tightrope walk. It lacks the complex late-game goals of newer titles, but the sheer atmospheric pressure of keeping a dying village alive makes it a classic you cannot ignore. Settlement survival. If you played Banished and wished it had 10 times more content, this exists entirely for you. The sheer volume of supply chains you can manipulate is staggering. You go from gathering berries to managing complex global trade routes, dealing with crime and fighting off the plague. You can completely terraform the land to fit your massive industrial zones. The massive tech tree can overwhelm you during the first few hours, but unlocking a new era of production feels like a massive power spike. It allows you to micromanage an empire down to the exact placement of every street lamp. Noble faiths. Here's the weird part. You rule a fantasy kingdom from a god perspective, but you can instantly possess any character and control them in third person. You can issue orders to your kingdom and then personally grab a sword to fight off goblin raiders alongside your peasants. Your subjects have deep memories and hold serious grudges. Piss off the wrong noble and they'll assassinate you in your sleep. The graphics have a very mobile game aesthetic that might push some people away, but the political backstabbing creates stories you'll want to share with everyone. Founder's Fortune. It looks like a casual mobile game, but hides a shockingly brutal psychology system. Your villagers have specific personality traits that completely dictate how your town operates. You might recruit a genius doctor who happens to be a complete pessimist that randomly stops working to complain. Designing the interior of their homes is completely modular, letting you build custom multi-story mansions. The tribal goblin attacks get a bit repetitive, but successfully managing the mental health of a dozen neurotic villagers makes you feel like a heavily underpaid therapist. Surviving the aftermath.
Most post-apocalyptic games focus on a single survivor. This hands you a massive wasteland and tells you to rebuild society. You send specialized specialists out into a massive overworld map to scavenge tech, fight bandits, and bring back rare resources. Dealing with radioactive fallout and strange mutant animal attacks forces you to constantly adapt your base layout. The early game resource grind can drag on a little too long, but transforming a crater full of rusty cars into a thriving futuristic fortress is deeply fulfilling. You literally dictate the future of human civilization. Stranded Alien Dawn. Taking the core ideas of RimWorld and translating them into high-fidelity three-dimensional graphics sounds impossible, but it completely delivers. Your crash survivors have to deal with strange alien weather patterns and massive aggressive bug swarms. The crafting system goes incredibly deep, allowing you to salvage spaceship debris and eventually build automated laser turrets. Watching your ragtag group of panicked survivors slowly turn into heavily armored cybernetic warriors is a massive power trip. The UI navigation takes a minute to figure out, but the visual payoff of your glowing high-tech base at night is phenomenal.